The doctor's hands were shaking when she told me I had benzodiazepines in my blood, drugs I never took, drugs my pharmaceutical billionaire husband had been slipping into my vitamins for 2 years. When I broke into his office 3 days later, I found files calling me subject, fertility suppression records, and a $100 million life insurance policy that would pay out if my heart stopped. He'd been systematically poisoning me, and I had 72 hours before he came home to decide: run, confront him, or destroy the man who tried to erase me. Before we begin, please subscribe and hit the like button. And let me know in the comments, have you ever felt something was wrong in your relationship, even when everyone else thought it looked perfect? Naomi felt that too, and the truth she uncovered didn't just save her life, it gave her a new one. This story is dedicated to anyone who's ever doubted their own instincts. Let's begin. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Naomi sat in the waiting room of Mount Sinai Medical Center, absently scrolling through her phone. At 29, she should have been the picture of health, but lately, something felt off. Not sick exactly, just tired, perpetually exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. Mrs. Castellanos, the nurse, called. Naomi followed her back to the examination room, her designer handbag, a gift from Greg for their second anniversary, hanging from her shoulder. She'd almost canceled this appointment 3 times. Greg had assured her the fatigue was normal, that her body was just adjusting to their new life together. But her best friend Maya had insisted she see someone, anyone, who wasn't connected to Greg's world. Dr. Sarah Chen was younger than Naomi expected, maybe mid-40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "So, what brings you in today, Mrs. Castellanos?" "Please, call me Naomi. I've just been feeling run down. My husband says it's probably stress from all the charity events and fundraisers, but I thought I should get checked out properly." "Your husband is?" Dr. Chen asked, pulling up her intake forms. "Greg Castellanos. He owns Castellanos Pharmaceuticals." Dr. Chen's pen paused mid-stroke, her expression shifting almost imperceptibly. "I see. And when was your last comprehensive physical?" "About 6 months ago. Greg arranged it with his company's medical team. And those results? Everything was fine. They said my vitamin levels were a bit low, so they started me on some supplements." Dr. Chen made a note. "I'd like to run our own panel, if that's all right, just to get a baseline." 3 days later, Naomi returned for her results. Dr. Chen's expression was carefully neutral as she gestured for Naomi to sit. "Your blood work came back, and I need to discuss some concerning findings with you." She pulled up charts on her computer. "Naomi, you have elevated levels of benzodiazepines in your system. Quite elevated, actually. Are you taking any anxiety medications?" Naomi's stomach dropped. "No, just the vitamins Greg gives me every morning." "The vitamins your husband gives you," Dr. Chen repeated slowly. "Naomi, I need you to bring those vitamins in. All of them. And I need to ask you something difficult. Do you have any reason to believe your husband might be medicating you without your knowledge?" The room tilted. That's insane. Why would he do that?" "I don't know. But the levels in your system didn't get there by accident." Naomi sat in her car for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. 2 years. She'd been taking those supplements for 2 years, ever since their honeymoon in Santorini, when Greg first presented them in a beautiful crystal container. "For your health, baby. I want you with me for a lifetime." Her phone buzzed. Greg's name lit up the screen with a text. "Hong Kong meetings running long. Won't be back until Thursday. Miss you. Love you." She typed back with trembling fingers. "Miss you too. Safe travels." 3 days. She had 3 days before he came home. 3 days to find out if the man she'd married, the man she'd trusted with everything, had been poisoning her in plain sight. Because if Greg had been lying about this, what else had he been lying about? Have you ever had a moment where you discovered someone you loved wasn't who you thought they were? Drop a comment below. I read every single one, and your stories might help someone else realize they're not alone. Naomi went home that afternoon in a daze. Greg was in Hong Kong for business, wouldn't be back for 3 days. She stood in their penthouse bathroom, staring at the neat row of supplement bottles on the marble counter. Each one had a custom label with elegant script: Naomi's Morning Blend, Evening Wellness, Energy Support. She'd been taking them religiously for 2 years. Ever since they got married, her hands shook as she photographed each bottle from multiple angles. The late afternoon sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the white marble. Then she grabbed a kitchen knife from the drawer and carefully pried open one of the capsules from the morning blend. Inside wasn't the green powder she expected, the spirulina and chlorella Greg always mentioned. It was white, pharmaceutical white, crystalline and chemical. The knife clattered against the counter. Naomi steadied herself, then methodically opened capsules from each bottle. All the same, white powder that looked nothing like natural supplements. She photographed everything, her photographer's eye automatically adjusting angles for clarity. Then she sealed the open capsules in plastic bags, labeled with dates and times. Evidence. This was evidence. But evidence of what, exactly? While Greg was away, Naomi did something she'd never done before. She walked toward his private office. The penthouse had an entire wing she rarely entered, Greg's sanctuary where he handled business matters. Mahogany doors, always closed. 2 years of marriage, and she'd respected that boundary. Not anymore. The office was exactly what she expected, sleek, modern, intimidating in its perfection. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with medical journals and pharmaceutical texts. A desk that probably cost more than a car. Everything in shades of charcoal and chrome, designed to project power. Naomi moved to the filing cabinets, her heart hammering. The first drawer opened too easily. Inside, a file with her name on it. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Medical reports she'd never seen before stared back at her. Detailed charts documenting her treatment, compliance and behavioral modification progress. But it was the handwritten notes in Greg's precise script that made her stomach turn. Subject: responding well to dosage adjustment. Short-term memory issues noted as expected. Increased dependence, decreased social engagement. Subject. He single quotes called her subject, not wife, not Naomi. Subject. She kept reading, each page worse than the last. Another section detailed fertility records, hormone suppression therapy she'd never consented to. Documentation spanning 2 years. But they weren't even trying for children yet. Greg had always said they should wait until his company's IPO was complete, until things were more stable. Now she understood why. Her breath came in short gasps as she opened another folder. A prenuptial agreement, but not the one she'd signed. The one she remembered had been generous, $5 million, and the apartment if they divorced. Standard for a billionaire's spouse, this document told a different story. If she became pregnant or filed for divorce within 5 years, she'd get nothing. After 5 years, she'd receive $50 million and shares in the company. Naomi did the math in her head. They'd been married for 2 years and 3 months. 21 months to go before she'd be entitled to anything. 21 months of compliance, of being the perfect wife, of staying not pregnant. 20-1 months before he'd planned to let her go. Unless the next file made her blood run cold. A life insurance policy. $100 million, with Greg as the sole beneficiary. And medical records showing the exact medications she'd been taking: benzodiazepines, hormone suppressants, and several others she didn't recognize. Beneath them, a pharmacological analysis in clinical language she barely understood, but one phrase jumped out: combined long-term use may result in cardiac events in otherwise healthy subjects. Cardiac events. Heart attacks. In young, healthy women. Her phone rang, the sudden sound making her jump. Greg's face filled the screen, that photograph from their engagement party, his smile warm and genuine. Or had it ever been genuine? How much of the man she'd married had been real? She stared at his face as it rang once, twice, 3 times. Memories flooded back, meeting him at that museum fundraiser 3 years ago, his charm, his attentiveness, the way he'd made her feel like the only woman in the world. The whirlwind courtship. The fairy tale wedding, all of it a lie. She let it go to voicemail. Moving quickly now, Naomi photographed every page of every document. The medical files. The fake prenup. The insurance policy. The pharmaceutical analysis. Her hands were steadier now, her photographer's training taking over. Good lighting. Sharp focus. Every detail captured. She uploaded everything to a secure cloud account Maya had helped her set up years ago for backing up her photography work. Then she carefully returned each file to its exact position, making sure nothing looked disturbed. The office door closed behind her with a soft click. Naomi stood in the hallway, evidence secured. The weight of knowledge pressing down on her shoulders. Greg would be home in 2 days. 2 days to plan what came next. 2 days to decide if she'd confront him, run from him, or destroy him. She looked down at her phone. At the missed call notification from her husband. Her poisoner. Her would-be murderer. And for the first time in 2 years, Naomi's mind felt clear. Greg came home 2 days early. His key turning in the lock at 6 a.m. Naomi was awake, sitting in the living room. The sunrise painting Manhattan gold and pink behind her. She'd been awake all night, rehearsing this moment, steeling herself for what was coming. "Baby, I missed you," he said, dropping his Louis Vuitton bag and moving to embrace her. His smile was wide, genuine looking. The same smile that had charmed her at that museum fundraiser 3 years ago. She stood but didn't step into his arms. "I went to the doctor while you were gone." Something flickered in his eyes, so brief she might have missed it if she hadn't been watching closely. "Oh, feeling better. They found benzodiazepines in my blood, Greg. High levels." His expression shifted to concern, perfectly calibrated. "That's impossible. Unless the lab made a mistake, I had them retest." Same results. She watched his face carefully, cataloging every micro-expression. "Any idea how they got there?" Greg's brow furrowed, the picture of confusion. "Naomi, you've been anxious. I've noticed it. Maybe you took something and forgot. Don't gaslight me." Her voice cut through his words like a blade. "I found the files in your office." The air between them went cold. Greg's jaw tightened, his mask slipping. "You went through my private office. You've been drugging me." She took a step forward, her fear transforming into something harder, sharper. "Suppressing my fertility. You have a $100 million life insurance policy on me. And I'm on medications that could kill me. You don't understand." Greg ran a hand through his hair, his composure cracking. "Then explain it to me." Her voice was steel. "Explain why my own husband has been poisoning me. It's not what you think." He was scrambling now, she could see it. "The medications, they're experimental. Cutting-edge longevity treatments. I was trying to help you help me." Naomi's voice rose. "You were sedating me like an animal. Controlling my fertility. Planning what, exactly? For me to die so you could collect." "Jesus, Naomi, no." But his eyes darted away, couldn't hold hers. "The insurance is standard for people at our wealth level, and the prenup I didn't sign. The real one that says I get nothing if I'm pregnant or divorced within 5 years. Greg went very still. "You saw that, all of it." They stared at each other across the living room, 2 years of false intimacy stripped away in an instant. The morning light illuminated every line of his face, and Naomi wondered how she'd ever thought she knew this man. "What do you want?" Greg asked finally, his voice flat. The warmth was gone completely now, replaced by something cold and calculating. "I want to know why." "Why me? Why any of this?" Greg laughed, a bitter sound that made her skin crawl. "You really don't know." He moved to the bar cart, poured himself a scotch despite the early hour. "Naomi, you're beautiful, cultured, educated, everything a man like me needs on his arm. But you're also black, from a middle-class family in Queens. No connections. No pedigree." The words hit like a physical blow, even though she'd suspected. Hearing it spoken aloud was different. "My board was concerned about the optics of our marriage," he continued, his tone almost conversational now. "They thought you might be a gold digger. That you'd get pregnant immediately, trap me, divorce me, take half of everything. So you decided to drug me and control me to prove I wasn't. I decided to protect my assets while figuring out if you were really in this for me or my money." Greg took a long drink. "The prenup ensures that. 5 years proves commitment. And if you'd gotten pregnant early, it would have complicated the company's IPO. The optics would have been, I'm your wife, not a business liability. You're both." Greg's mask was completely off now, revealing the calculating businessman beneath. "Don't act so shocked, Naomi. You knew what you were getting into when you married a billionaire. This is how our world works. Your world." Naomi moved toward the entrance where her purse sat, already packed with essentials. "Not mine." "Where are you going?" "Away from you. My lawyer will be in touch." "Naomi, Greg's voice stopped her, and she heard the shift in his tone from cold to threatening. "If you try to fight me on this, I will bury you. My legal team is the best money can buy. And who's going to believe you over me?" He set down his glass, his eyes hard. "A poor black girl from Queens claiming her billionaire husband drugged her. They'll call you hysterical. A gold digger trying to extort me. They'll destroy you in the media before you even get to court." Naomi turned, meeting his eyes one last time. She saw it all now, the calculation, the contempt, the absolute certainty that his wealth would protect him from consequences. That she was too small, too powerless, too easily dismissed to be a real threat. "Then I guess we'll find out," she said quietly. She walked out the door. And this time, she didn't look back. Behind her, Greg stood alone in the penthouse, surrounded by his carefully curated wealth, his perfectly designed life. The sunrise painted everything in shades of gold, but the light felt cold now. His phone buzzed. His lawyer, probably. Or maybe his mother, already sensing trouble. For the first time in his carefully planned life, Greg Castellanos realized he might have miscalculated. And outside, descending in the private elevator, Naomi felt something she hadn't experienced in 2 years. Clarity. The carefully constructed world was crumbling, and she was just getting started. Patricia Coleman's office in Midtown was nothing like Greg's world of marble and chrome. It was practical, lived in, with case files stacked on every surface and a view of a brick wall. Maya had recommended her, "Best family law attorney I know, and she doesn't back down from powerful men." Naomi laid everything out on the conference table. Dr. Chen's blood work results. Printed photographs of Greg's files. The supplement bottles, sealed in evidence bags. Her hands were steady now, the shock giving way to cold determination. Patricia, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and silver-streaked hair, examined each piece methodically. "This is extensive," she said finally. "You documented everything. I'm a photographer. Documentation is what I do. Good instincts." Patricia made notes on her legal pad. "I want to bring in a pharmacologist consultant. We need expert testimony on what these supplements actually contain and what they could do to someone taking them long-term." 2 days later, Dr. Marcus Reeves sat in the same conference room, the supplement bottles spread before him. He was a toxicologist who'd testified in dozens of pharmaceutical cases. His expression grew darker as he worked through his analysis. "Benzodiazepines, as your doctor found," he confirmed, pointing to the morning blend. "But also hormone suppressants here," and he paused, examining another bottle, "something I haven't seen outside of clinical trials. This combination, taken together over months or years." He looked up at Naomi. "You're lucky to be alive. The cardiac risks alone, how bad?" Naomi asked. "These drugs interact in dangerous ways. Memory impairment, dependency, increased risk of heart arrhythmia. In some cases, cardiac arrest." Dr. Reeves pushed the bottles away as if they might contaminate him. "Whoever formulated these knew exactly what they were doing. This isn't accidental. This is systematic." Patricia leaned back in her chair. "Naomi, I need to be honest with you. Greg Castellanos is a billionaire with unlimited resources. He'll hire the best defense lawyers money can buy. They'll try to discredit you, paint you as mentally unstable, a gold digger, anything that sticks. Character assassination is standard playbook for cases like this." "Cases like this?" Naomi asked. "Wealthy men accused of abuse by their wives. It could drag on for years. The legal fees alone." Patricia paused. "I'll work with you on payment. But you need to understand what you're up against." Naomi thought of the files in Greg's office. The clinical notes calling her subject, the deliberate, calculated cruelty of it all. "How many other women has he done this to?" she asked quietly. Patricia and Dr. Reeves exchanged glances. "That's what I keep asking myself," Naomi continued. "If he did this to me, who else? His last girlfriend. The one before that." She met Patricia's eyes. "If I back down, he wins. He gets away with it. And he'll do it again to someone else. Then we fight," Patricia said simply. "But we fight smart." Within a week, they'd filed everything. Criminal complaint, assault, conspiracy, fraud. Civil lawsuit, fraud, emotional distress, breach of contract. A restraining order keeping Greg at least 500 feet away. A motion to freeze their joint assets. Greg's response was immediate and overwhelming. Preston Blackwood. The Preston Blackwood, famous for defending CEOs and politicians, appeared as Greg's attorney. Within 48 hours, they'd filed a countersuit for defamation. Greg's statement to the press called Naomi's allegations false claims by a mentally unstable spouse who refused psychiatric treatment. The media seized on it instantly. Pharmaceutical billionaire faces abuse allegations ran on page 6. Naomi's name was initially withheld, but everyone who mattered already knew. The comments sections were brutal. Another gold digger going after a rich man. She knew what she was signing up for. Probably spent all his money and now wants more. But there were other comments too. Believe women. Rich men think they're untouchable. If he owns a pharmaceutical company, he'd know exactly how to drug someone. Maya found Naomi reading them at 2 a.m. in the small studio apartment in Brooklyn they were sharing, worlds away from the penthouse. Stop reading that garbage, Maya said, taking the phone away. They don't know you. They don't know what happened. Some of them think they do. Naomi's voice was hollow. Maya sat beside her on the pull-out couch. I knew something was wrong. For months, maybe a year. You seemed like you were disappearing. Like someone was turning down your volume bit by bit. Her voice cracked. You stopped calling as much. Stopped coming to our yoga sessions. When we did hang out, you seemed foggy. Like you weren't fully there. Why didn't you say something? I tried. You'd say you were fine, just tired, just busy. And Greg was always so attentive, so concerned. I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maya wiped her eyes. I should have pushed harder. He was drugging me. You couldn't have known, but I knew you. And I knew the woman I was seeing wasn't fully you. Naomi's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't open it, but something made her look. Drop this now or you'll regret it. Her stomach clenched. She screenshotted it immediately and forwarded it to Patricia. Maya read it over her shoulder. Jesus, should we call the police? Patricia will handle it. Naomi stared at the message, then at the ceiling of Maya's cramped apartment. 2 weeks ago, she'd been sleeping on Egyptian cotton sheets in a penthouse. Now she was on a pull-out couch, being threatened by anonymous numbers. But she wasn't afraid. She was angry. Another text from Patricia. Document everything. This helps our case, Naomi typed back. Let them come. Outside, Brooklyn hummed with late-night traffic. Somewhere in Manhattan, Greg was probably sleeping soundly in his penthouse, surrounded by lawyers who'd tell him he'd win. But Naomi had something he didn't, the truth. And she wasn't backing down. The psychiatric evaluation was Greg's next move. His lawyers filed a motion claiming Naomi was delusional, mentally unstable, fabricating allegations to extort money. The judge, looking exhausted by the theatrics, ordered a court-appointed evaluation with Dr. Rachel Foster, a forensic psychiatrist with 30 years of experience, 6 hours over 2 days. Naomi sat in Dr. Foster's office answering questions about her childhood, her mental health history, her relationship with Greg. The doctor was methodical, kind but clinical, taking notes in a leather journal. Tell me about the supplements, Dr. Foster said during the second session. Naomi described everything, the custom labels, Greg's insistence she take them every morning, the way he'd watch to make sure she swallowed them. He said it was because he loved me, because he wanted me healthy. And how did you feel while taking them? Tired, foggy, like I was moving underwater. Naomi's voice cracked. I thought something was wrong with me. He said I was just stressed, that I needed to relax more, trust him more. Classic gaslighting, Dr. Foster noted. Making you doubt your own perceptions. The evaluation results came back within a week. Patricia read them aloud in her office, her voice triumphant. No evidence of mental illness, delusional thinking, or psychological instability. Patients' reported symptoms are entirely consistent with involuntary benzodiazepine administration. Notable improvement in cognitive function and emotional regulation since cessation of medications. Strongly supports patients' account of events. Greg's strategy had failed spectacularly, but Patricia's investigators were uncovering something even more damning. We found his ex-girlfriends, Patricia said, sliding a file across her desk. 3 of them. And Naomi, their stories. Lauren Mitchell was 34 now, an artist living in Brooklyn. She'd dated Greg 5 years ago, 18 months of what she thought was love. Patricia and Naomi met her at a coffee shop in Williamsburg. The fatigue started about 3 months in, Lauren said, stirring her coffee absently. He was so concerned, always bringing me vitamins, supplements. Said his pharmaceutical connections meant he could get the best stuff. She laughed bitterly. I trusted him. What made you leave? Naomi asked. I found strange pills in one of the bottles. Opened it by accident when the label came off. They didn't look like vitamins. Lauren's hands tightened around her mug. When I confronted him, he said I was paranoid, that stress was making me see things that weren't there. He was so convincing that I almost believed him. But something in my gut said run. Michelle Torres, 32, worked in finance. She dated Greg 3 years ago. They met at Patricia's office, Michelle dressed in a sharp suit, looking every bit the successful professional. But her hands shook when she talked. I was hospitalized once, she said. Unexplained cardiac episode. I was 29 and healthy, ran marathons, ate clean. The doctors couldn't figure it out. She paused. After we broke up, I found supplement bottles he'd left at my place. I threw them away. I didn't want to know. Do you regret that? Naomi asked gently. Every day. Michelle's voice broke. Because if I'd tested them, maybe you wouldn't have had to go through this. Jessica Huang was 30, a teacher in Los Angeles. She'd moved across the country for a job, which had ended her 2-year relationship with Greg. She flew to New York to meet them, taking personal days she couldn't afford. Same pattern, she said, showing them photos on her phone, supplement bottles with custom labels, nearly identical to Naomi's. I still have health issues, heart palpitations, memory problems. My doctor says it might be permanent damage. Patricia laid out all 4 cases on her conference table. The pattern was undeniable. Same supplements, same control tactics, same gradual isolation from friends and family. And all 4 women were women of color from middle-class backgrounds, women Greg's world might dismiss, might not believe. He has a type, Patricia said grimly. Women he thinks he can control. Women he thinks are vulnerable. But Greg wasn't finished fighting. Private investigators began following Naomi everywhere. Photos of her arriving at Patricia's office appeared on gossip sites. Anonymous social media accounts launched coordinated attacks. Gold digger mad the prenup is holding. 4 women suddenly coming forward. Coordinated shakedown. He's rich and handsome. Why would he need to drug women? The racism and misogyny blended into something toxic. Comments about Naomi's appearance, her background, her worth. The internet had become a weapon, and Greg's team was wielding it expertly. Then came the settlement offer. Preston Blackwood himself called Patricia. Greg's family, old money, deeply connected, was offering $5 million. Complete non-disclosure agreement. Drop all criminal and civil charges. Go away quietly. They're scared, Patricia said after relaying the offer. They wouldn't offer this much otherwise. We've got them on the defensive. Naomi stood at the window of Patricia's office, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Somewhere in one of those buildings, Greg was probably celebrating, thinking she'd take the money and disappear. I don't want money, she said quietly. I want justice. It's a lot of money, Naomi, and trials are brutal. This could take years. How many other women are out there? Naomi turned to face Patricia, Lauren, Michelle, and Jessica, 4 women whose lives Greg had tried to destroy. How many more will there be if we let him buy his way out? The 4 women looked at each other. Something passed between them, an understanding that transcended words. Press conference, Lauren said. All 4 of us. Make it impossible for them to dismiss us. 2 days later, they stood in front of cameras outside the courthouse. Patricia read a statement while the 4 women stood behind her, united. Today, 3 additional victims of Gregory Castellanos are joining this lawsuit. The pattern of systematic abuse, drugging, and control is undeniable. Mr. Castellanos used his wealth, his pharmaceutical knowledge, and his position of power to abuse vulnerable women. We are here to say, no more. Naomi stepped forward, looking directly into the cameras. We're not backing down. The story exploded across every news outlet. The narrative was shifting. 4 women, all with similar stories, all with evidence it was harder to dismiss as gold digging or delusion. In his penthouse, Greg Castellanos watched the press conference on repeat, his carefully constructed world cracking apart. and in Brooklyn, 4 survivors sat together, supporting each other through what came next. The battle was far from over. But they were no longer alone. The Manhattan Criminal Courthouse was packed, every seat filled, journalists lining the walls. Outside, news vans created a media circus, cameras tracking every rival. Naomi walked through it with Maya and Patricia flanking her, their presence a shield against the chaos. Judge Martha Reynolds presided, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a reputation for being fair but uncompromising, particularly in cases involving abuse of power. She surveyed the courtroom with sharp eyes before gaveling the proceedings to order. Naomi saw Greg across the aisle. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without his penthouse and his power surrounding him. But the arrogance remained in the set of his jaw. The way he conferred with Preston Blackwood as if this were merely an inconvenient business meeting. Ada Rebecca Torres stood for the prosecution's opening statement. She was formidable, late 40s, with a track record of taking down wealthy criminals who thought themselves untouchable. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about systematic, calculated abuse over multiple years, she began, her voice carrying through the courtroom. Gregory Castellanos used his wealth, his power, and his access to pharmaceuticals as weapons against vulnerable women. He drugged them, controlled them, isolated them. And when they tried to leave, he gaslighted them into believing they were crazy. She paused, letting the words sink in. We have for victims willing to testify, for women whose lives he nearly destroyed. And we have to ask, how many more are out there who haven't come forward? Preston Blackwood countered with polished precision. What we have here is a bitter ex-wife who violated her husband's privacy, coordinated with other women he dated, and constructed an elaborate conspiracy to extort money from a successful businessman. His voice was smooth, reasonable. These women all dated the same wealthy man. Is it really so surprising they might coordinate their stories? The prosecution wants you to believe Mr. Castellanos had intent to harm. But these supplements were legitimate wellness products, prescribed with good intentions. The jury listened, some faces skeptical, others neutral. Everything would hinge on the evidence. Dr. Sarah Chen took the stand first, professional and unshakable in her white coat. She explained the blood work findings, the elevated benzodiazepine levels that had first revealed the truth. There is no legitimate medical reason for these levels in someone not being treated for anxiety or a seizure disorder. She testified, the levels Mrs. Castellanos presented with would cause exactly the symptoms she experienced: fatigue, cognitive fog, memory issues, increased dependence. Blackwood tried to discredit her on cross-examination, suggesting lab errors or misinterpretation. Dr. Chen didn't budge. I've been practicing medicine for 20 years. I know what I saw. And I know those levels didn't get there by accident. Then Naomi took the stand. 2 days of testimony. She walked the jury through everything: meeting Greg at the museum fundraiser 3 years ago, his charm, his attentiveness, the whirlwind romance, the way he'd made her feel like the center of his universe. Marriage after 10 months of dating. The supplements that started immediately after their honeymoon. He said they were for my health, Naomi testified, her voice steady. Custom blends from his pharmaceutical connections. He told me he loved me, that he wanted me with him for a lifetime. She paused. I believed him. She described the gradual changes, the fatigue that sleep couldn't fix, memory lapses, friends she stopped seeing, the way her world had slowly shrunk until it was just her and Greg, and she was too tired to notice. When did you realize something was wrong? Torres asked. When Dr. Chen told me I had drugs in my system I'd never consented to taking. When I found files in his office calling me subject. When I discovered he had a life insurance policy that would pay out if I died. Naomi's voice cracked. I trusted him with everything. And he betrayed that trust in the most fundamental way possible. Blackwood's cross-examination was aggressive, designed to break her. Isn't it true you married Mr. Castellanos for his money? No, I married him because I loved him. Isn't it true you illegally entered his private office and stole confidential documents? I entered the office in the home we shared because I discovered my husband was poisoning me. Isn't it true you're angry that the prenuptial agreement protects his assets? Naomi looked directly at Blackwood. I'm angry because he treated me like property, like an experiment, like something he could control and discard when convenient. The jury watched her, some leaning forward. She hadn't broken. Lauren, Michelle, and Jessica testified next, each telling similar stories. The supplements, the fatigue, the isolation. The patterns were impossible to deny. One juror was seen wiping tears as Jessica described her lasting heart problems. Dr. James Morrison, the pharmacological expert, explained the drug interactions in devastating detail. These combinations don't happen by accident. They require sophisticated pharmaceutical knowledge. The drugs were designed to create dependence while avoiding obvious overdose to control, not to kill outright. Though prolonged use absolutely could cause cardiac events or death, then Greg took the stand. He was polished at first, confident. The supplements were wellness optimization, he claimed. Cutting-edge longevity science. These women simply misunderstood my intentions. Torres's cross-examination was surgical. Mr. Castellanos, can you explain why you referred to your wife as subject in your private notes? Greg's composure flickered. That was medical shorthand. Clinical documentation for your wife, or for an experiment. Objection. Blackwood called. Sustained, Judge Reynolds said. But the jury had heard it. Torres pressed on. Can you explain the hidden prenuptial agreement? The one your wife never signed. That was a draft. A mistaken filing. Can you explain the $100 million life insurance policy on a healthy 29-year-old woman? Standard estate planning, standard? Or profitable if something happened to her while taking the drugs you were administering? Greg's jaw tightened. His smooth facade was cracking, revealing the calculating businessman beneath. He couldn't explain away the evidence. The files. The hidden prenup. The insurance policy. The pattern across for different women. By the time he left the stand, he looked exactly what he was, guilty. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Naomi waited outside the courtroom with Patricia, Maya, Lauren, Michelle, and Jessica. They sat together in silence, occasionally squeezing hands, offering water. Existing in that liminal space between past trauma and future justice. Whatever happens, Naomi said quietly, we told the truth. The others nodded. They'd done everything they could. When the bailiff called them back, Naomi's heart hammered. She watched the jury file in, trying to read their faces. Judge Reynolds asked the foreperson to stand. On all counts, have you reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. The courtroom held its breath. On all counts, we find the defendant guilty. The words echoed through the courtroom like a thunderclap. Greg's face went pale, his carefully maintained composure shattering. In the gallery, his mother began crying, whether from shame or grief. Naomi couldn't tell. Naomi felt Maya's hand squeeze hers. She waited for triumph, for vindication, for some surge of victorious emotion. Instead, what came was simpler, quieter, closure. The man who'd tried to erase her had been seen and judged. 3 weeks later, the courtroom filled again for sentencing. Judge Reynolds looked down at Greg with an expression of profound disappointment. Mr. Castellanos, you systematically abused your power, your trust, and your medical knowledge to exploit vulnerable women, she began. You used your pharmaceutical expertise not to heal, but to harm, to control, to diminish human beings you claimed to love. She paused, letting the silence settle. Wealth and privilege are not shields from justice. They are, in fact, aggravating factors when used as weapons. The prosecution recommended 12 years. Blackwood argued for 3, citing Greg's contributions to medical research and lack of prior criminal record. Judge Reynolds removed her glasses. Both recommendations are insufficient for the systematic nature of these crimes. Greg's face drained of color. 15 years in state prison. No possibility of parole for a minimum of 10 years. $25 million in restitution to be split equally among the 4 victims. Permanent restraining orders from all 4 women and any future relationships. Additionally, you are permanently barred from practicing medicine or working in any pharmaceutical capacity. As Greg was led away in handcuffs, Naomi watched the billion-dollar empire crumble. The Castellanos Pharmaceuticals board had already removed him, restructuring the company to distance themselves from the scandal. The civil suit settled separately. Naomi received over $50 million in assets, though the money felt almost incidental now. What mattered was that he couldn't hurt anyone else. Outside the courthouse, The four women stood together for a final press conference. Cameras flashed as Naomi stepped to the microphone. "Today isn't about revenge," she said, her voice steady and clear. "It's about accountability. Wealthy abusers think their money protects them from consequences. We proved it doesn't." She looked directly into the cameras. "To other victims out there, you will be believed. You are not alone, and there are people ready to fight for you." 6 months later, Naomi stood in her new apartment, modest but beautiful, with a view of Central Park's tree line. It was a fraction of the size of the penthouse, and she loved every inch of it. She'd been working with Dr. Lynn, a trauma therapist, twice a week, processing everything, rebuilding her sense of self. Her physical health had fully recovered. No more fatigue, no more fog. The mental clarity was almost startling, like she'd been living behind frosted glass and someone had finally wiped it clean. The Clear Eyes Initiative officially launched that month, named for the clarity she'd fought so hard to reclaim. The foundation helped victims of intimate partner abuse by wealthy perpetrators, providing legal referrals, medical advocacy, and financial support to fight back against abusers who thought money made them untouchable. Maya was co-director. Lauren, Michelle, and Jessica served on the advisory board. In just 6 months, they'd already helped 50 women escape or prosecute their abusers. Naomi became a public speaker, traveling to domestic violence conferences to share her story. She wrote an op-ed for the New York Times about coercive control and medical abuse. She was interviewed on podcasts, taught self-defense and empowerment workshops, turned her pain into purpose. But she also rediscovered herself. She took painting classes, something she'd always loved but Greg had dismissed as hobby work. She joined a book club with real friends who knew her story and loved her anyway. She volunteered at a women's shelter. She even started dating again, casually, no pressure. Learning to trust her own judgment about people. One afternoon, she met Dr. Chen for coffee in a small cafe near Mount Sinai. "I never properly thanked you," Naomi said. "You saved my life." Dr. Chen smiled gently. "You saved your own life, Naomi. I just provided information. You made the choice to investigate, to fight, to not let him silence you." They talked about how many doctors miss the signs of coercive control, how easy it is to dismiss a woman's concerns as anxiety or stress, especially when her partner is charming and successful. "Would you consider speaking at our medical conference next month?" Dr. Chen asked. "About patient advocacy and recognizing abuse, I'd be honored." 1 year after that initial appointment at Mount Sinai, Naomi sat in the Clear Eyes Initiative office. The space was warm, filled with plants and soft furniture designed to feel safe, not institutional. A young woman sat across from her, 26, nervous, clutching a bag containing vitamin bottles her wealthy boyfriend insisted she take. "I've been so tired lately," the woman said, her voice shaking, "and he says it's stress, that I just need to trust him. But something feels wrong." Naomi leaned forward, her expression open and believing. "Tell me everything," she said, "and know this. I believe you." Sitting across from that young woman, I thought about Dr. Chen believing me when she had every reason to dismiss my concerns. About Maya insisting I get that second opinion. About the 3 women who came forward when they could have stayed silent. We all need someone to say "I believe you" when the world tells us we're overreacting. If this story resonated with you, or if you know someone who needs to hear it, leave a comment. And if you're currently in a situation that feels wrong, trust your gut. That feeling saved my life. She saw herself in this woman, the fear, the confusion, the desperate need for someone to validate what she was experiencing. Naomi was passing forward the help she'd received, the belief that had saved her life. That night, alone in her apartment, Naomi reflected on the journey. Greg had tried to make her small, compliant, forgettable, controllable. He'd wanted a beautiful accessory he could sedate and manage like a corporate asset. Instead, she'd become strong, unforgettable, free. The life she had now bore no resemblance to the life she'd had in that penthouse. She made less money, lived in less space, wore less expensive clothes. And she wouldn't change any of it, because now she was fully herself, awake, clear-eyed, purposeful. She thought of all the women the initiative would help, all the abusers who would face consequences, All the lives that would be saved because she'd refused to stay silent. Nothing was the same. And she was grateful for that. The routine checkup that exposed the truth didn't just save her life, it gave her a new one worth living. A life that was finally, completely hers. Thank you for listening. Until next time.